Hello there, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. Tonight, we turn our attention toward a distant world that drifts in the outer solar system like a softly glowing titan. Jupiter, the giant of swirling clouds and deep, unseen layers. Take a moment to let your body settle into stillness. And if you'd like, gently close your eyes. Allow your breath to slow just a bit, and imagine yourself floating far above Earth, leaving behind the noise and edges of everyday life. Picture Jupiter, now enormous, calm, and ancient, painted with bands of muted amber and cream that wrap around it like slow-moving rivers of wind. Nothing there is abrupt or rushed. Even the storms that churn through its atmosphere move like vast circular sighs, unfolding over years and decades. Jupiter is not a planet of footsteps or solid ground. It is a realm of sky upon sky, depth upon depth, a sculpture made of motion rather than matter. As we drift closer, the planet reveals itself not as a chaotic storm sphere, but as a peaceful giant, its silence stretching outward like a soft gravity that seems to quiet the space around it. Jupiter feels steady, unhurried, patient, a world that has existed for billions of years and will continue long after we are gone. If you find comfort in slow science like this, softly spoken and made for restful curiosity, you're welcome to subscribe and join us whenever you need calm. So let yourself float there in quiet imagination and release any thought that tries to intrude. You don't need to hold on to anything. Just breathe, just drift, just listen. This is the most relaxing facts about Jupiter to fall asleep. Let's begin. Jupiter is so massive that its presence shapes the architecture of our solar system. Its gravity acts like a quiet shepherd, guiding asteroids, deflecting comets, and protecting the inner planets from countless impacts. Earth, fragile and living, owes part of its safety to Jupiter's silent vigilance. It is a cosmic guardian that absorbs danger, drawing stray objects toward itself, like a gentle giant shielding younger siblings. Just knowing that Jupiter watches over our world adds a layer of calm to the night sky, a reminder that protection can exist in silence. Floating within Jupiter's upper atmosphere are cloud structures made not of water as on Earth, but of ammonia crystals and hydrocarbon haze. These clouds stretch for thousands of kilometers, creating dreamy ribbons of color that drift and blend. From above, the view resembles soft strokes of paint swirling across a liquid sky. These clouds are not light and airy. They are thick, layered, and deeply textured, like velvet curtains moving in never-ending wind. To observe them is to witness the elegance of chaos made calm. The Great Red Spot is a storm that has been spinning for at least 350 years, and possibly much longer. Older than telescopes, older than empires, older than many civilizations that have risen and fallen on Earth. And yet, in all this time, it has continued, turning gracefully in its oval shape, bordered by quiet winds that circle like dancers in endless round. Though it is a storm of unimaginable power, from afar it resembles a single, unblinking eye, not angry or violent, but steady, ancient, and strangely composed. Beneath Jupiter's clouds, there is no solid ground, only deeper layers of gas and fluid hydrogen. If you were to sink into its atmosphere, you would never stand, never land. You would simply drift deeper and deeper, pressure rising around you in increments of unimaginable density. It is like falling into an ocean without seabed, like descending into dream mist without waking. Jupiter is not a planet to walk upon, it is a world to float within. Jupiter emits more heat than it receives from the sun, glowing very faintly from within. This internal warmth is born from gravitational compression, a slow squeeze that generates heat over billions of years. It is almost like the planet has a heartbeat of warmth, pulsing gently under its layers of cloud. Jupiter glows faintly in infrared, invisible to human eyes, but present nonetheless, a quiet inner fire. Surrounding Jupiter is a faint ring system, thin and ghost-like compared to Saturn's. These rings are made of dust particles stirred up by micrometeoroid impacts on its moons. They do not announce themselves boldly. Instead, they hover like a delicate halo, barely visible, whispering rather than speaking. Their subtlety feels almost poetic. Saturn shouts with its rings, Jupiter whispers with its own. The enormous winds on Jupiter blow in alternating east-west directions, creating the distinctive striped bands across its surface. Yet these winds, which reach extraordinary speeds, appear from a distance as tranquil motions, slow, endless drifts carried across huge belts' atmosphere. They do not roar, they glide. They turn the planet into a giant, breathing sphere of motion and pause, motion and pause. Jupiter's magnetic field is the strongest of any planet in the solar system, creating a vast protective cocoon of charged particles. This magnetosphere extends millions of kilometers into space, forming an invisible shelter that captures radiation, shapes particle streams, and interacts with the solar wind in breathtaking complexity. Though unseen, this field is felt. It hums around Jupiter like a silent aura, a shield of invisible strength. Orbiting Jupiter are dozens of moons, a family of worlds, each with their own landscapes, seas, and stories. They follow Jupiter like gentle companions, locked in gravitational harmony. Europa, with its icy ocean. Io, with its fiery volcanism. Ganymede, larger than Mercury. And Callisto, ancient and cratered. Each moon is a world within a world. And together, they form a quiet retinue around their colossal parent, moving in stately arcs through darkness. Jupiter's sheer size distorts space-time itself. Its gravitational pull bends the paths of objects passing nearby, altering orbits and reshaping motion, like a master of cosmic choreography. In this way, Jupiter is not merely an object in space, it is part of the architecture of the solar system. It does not simply exist, it participates. Its presence shapes destiny of comets, asteroids, dust, and perhaps of us. Jupiter is so massive that its presence shapes the architecture of our solar system. Its gravity acts like a quiet shepherd, guiding asteroids, deflecting comets, and protecting the inner planets from countless impacts. Earth, fragile and living, owes part of its safety to Jupiter's silent vigilance. It is a cosmic guardian that absorbs danger, drawing stray objects toward itself like a gentle giant shielding younger siblings. Just knowing that Jupiter watches over our world adds a layer of calm to the night sky, a reminder that protection can exist in silence. Floating within Jupiter's upper atmosphere are cloud structures made not of water as on Earth, but of ammonia crystals and hydrocarbon haze. These clouds stretch for thousands of kilometers, creating dreamy ribbons of color that drift and blend. From above, the view resembles soft strokes of paint swirling across a liquid sky. These clouds are not light and airy. They are thick, layered, and deeply textured, like velvet curtains moving in never-ending wind. To observe them is to witness the elegance of chaos made calm. The Great Red Spot is a storm that has been spinning for at least 350 years, and possibly much longer. Older than telescopes, older than empires, older than many civilizations that have risen and fallen on Earth. And yet, in all this time, it has continued, turning gracefully in its oval shape, bordered by quiet winds that circle like dancers in endless round. Though it is a storm of unimaginable power, from afar it resembles a single unblinking eye, not angry or violent, but steady, ancient, and strangely composed. Beneath Jupiter's clouds, there is no solid ground, only deeper layers of gas and fluid hydrogen. If you were to sink into its atmosphere, you would never stand, never land. You would simply drift deeper and deeper, pressure rising around you in increments of unimaginable density. It is like falling into an ocean without seabed, like a descending into dream mist without waking. Jupiter is not a planet to walk upon. It is a world to float within. Jupiter emits more heat than it receives from the sun, glowing very faintly from within. This internal warmth is born from gravitational compression, a slow squeeze that generates heat over billions of years. It is almost like the planet has a heartbeat of warmth, pulsing gently under its layers of cloud. Jupiter glows faintly in infrared, invisible to human eyes, but present nonetheless, a quiet inner fire. Surrounding Jupiter is a faint ring system, thin and ghost-like compared to Saturn's. These rings are made of dust particles stirred up by micrometeoroid impacts on its moons. They do not announce themselves boldly. Instead, they hover like a delicate halo, barely visible, whispering rather than speaking. Their subtlety feels almost poetic. Saturn shouts with its rings. Jupiter whispers with its own. The enormous winds on Jupiter blow in alternating east-west directions, creating the distinctive striped bands across its surface. Yet these winds, which reach extraordinary speeds, appear from a distance as tranquil motions, slow endless drifts carried across huge belts of atmosphere. They do not roar, they glide. They turn the planet into a giant, breathing sphere of motion and pause, motion and pause. Jupiter's magnetic field is the strongest of any planet in the solar system, creating a vast protective cocoon of charged particles. This magnetosphere extends millions of kilometers into space, forming an invisible shelter that captures radiation, shapes particle streams, and interacts with the solar wind in breathtaking complexity. Though unseen, this field is felt. It hums around Jupiter like a silent aura, a shield of invisible strength. Orbiting Jupiter are dozens of moons, a family of worlds each with their own landscapes, seas, and stories. They follow Jupiter like gentle companions, locked in gravitational harmony. Europa, with its icy ocean, Io, with its fiery volcanism, Ganymede, larger than Mercury, and Callisto, ancient and cratered. Each moon is a world within a world, and together they form a quiet retinue around their colossal parent, moving in stately arcs through darkness. Jupiter's sheer size distorts space-time itself. Its gravitational pull bends the paths of objects passing nearby, altering orbits and reshaping motion, like a master of cosmic choreography. In this way, Jupiter is not merely an object in space. It is part of the architecture of the solar system. It does not simply exist, it participates. Its presence shapes destiny of comets, asteroids, dust, and perhaps of us. Far beyond the gleaming clouds we can see, Jupiter's interior grows increasingly warm and heavy, eventually becoming a dense, hot, liquid realm where pressures reach millions of times those on Earth. In that deep interior, atoms are squeezed so tightly that electrons drift freely, and matter behaves in ways that defy our intuitive understanding. If consciousness could exist there, it would experience the sensation of being held from all sides, weightless and crushed at once, like floating in a dream of dense light. The coloration of Jupiter's cloud bands comes from subtle traces of unknown compounds, possibly sulfur, phosphorus, or yet undiscovered chemicals suspended in the atmosphere. Scientists do not fully know what gives Jupiter its rusty creams, pale terracottas, dusty golds, and faded ochres. These colors remain partly mysterious, turning the planet into a living artwork with pigments still unnamed. This uncertainty lends Jupiter a poetic secret, a planet painted partly in knowledge, partly in enigma. Jupiter's rotation is extraordinarily fast for its size, spinning once every 10 Earth hours. This rapid spin causes the planet to bulge at the equator and flatten at the poles, giving Jupiter a subtle oblong shape rather than a perfect sphere. Its equator swells outward like a slowly breathing belly of gas, stretched by a centrifugal force, as if Jupiter's own momentum were gently trying to expand it. The entire planet is caught between gravity pulling inward and rotation pushing outward, forming a shape of perfect compromise. Through telescopes, Jupiter often appears serene, its cloud belts flowing in elegant stripes. But this tranquility is an illusion of perspective. Up close, each stripe is a roaring band of wind, shearing past neighbors at hundreds of miles per hour. Yet from afar, their motion resembles a quiet river. This contrast violence, perceived as softness, reminds us that calmness is sometimes a matter of distance, rather than absolute state. The Galilean moons. Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto were the first objects ever discovered orbiting another planet. Their discovery by Galileo in 1610 transformed our view of the universe. Until then, humans assumed everything revolved around Earth. But these 4 moons circling Jupiter proved otherwise in silence. Jupiter, through its quiet gravity, helped humanity understand that we are not the center, that motion exists everywhere, independent of us. Io, the closest large moon, endures constant tidal stretching from Jupiter's gravity, resulting in volcanic eruptions more powerful than any on Earth. Yet these eruptions, seen from a distance, appear not as explosions, but as glowing plumes, rising and falling in slow, majestic arcs. Io becomes a world of molten breath, its surface reshaped continuously by Jupiter's pull, like clay responding to invisible hands. Europa, one of Jupiter's most intriguing moons, holds beneath its icy shell a global ocean of liquid water, perhaps twice as voluminous as all Earth's oceans combined. This hidden sea lies in perpetual darkness, warmed by tidal forces. Within that abyss, conditions may exist for life, not fragile or oxygen-hungry, but deep and primordial. Europa is like a sealed world of possibility, a silent ocean dreaming beneath frozen glass. Jupiter influences not only its moons, but entire regions of space. Its colossal gravity captures comets and asteroids into long elliptical orbits, storing them in the Jupiter-Trojan clouds ahead of and behind the planet in its orbit. These clusters are like enormous shoals of cosmic debris, drifting with Jupiter through the solar system, millions of fragments quietly following their massive shepherd. The faint rings of Jupiter are continually replenished by tiny impacts on its moons, especially Métis, Adrastea, and Thebe, which release dust that becomes trapped in orbit. These rings are ephemeral, constantly renewed by soft collisions and continuously erased by solar radiation. They exist in a dance of creation and dissipation, fragile halos that waver between existence and disappearance. And finally, Jupiter serves as a reminder of scale, that even our largest thoughts are small in a universe of giants. When we drift in our minds toward this enormous, swirling world, our daily burdens lighten. Jupiter's immensity makes room for perspective, dissolving worries into something almost humorous in their smallness. In contemplating Jupiter, the mind stretches beyond itself, finding quiet relief in cosmic proportion. Jupiter's magnetic field traps charged particles and funnels them toward its polar regions, creating invisible rivers of energy that can swirl through space for millions of kilometers. If you could see these particle streams with your eyes, they would look like long, glowing filaments, arching around the planet like slow lightning, frozen in motion. This unseen architecture of magnetism shapes the space around Jupiter into a silent symphony of forces, where invisible currents move with the certainty of tides, powerful, controlled, and beautifully restrained. When Earth is struck by comets or asteroids today, we understand those impacts as isolated events, but Jupiter receives impacts far more often. One of the most dramatic examples occurred in 1994, when comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 was pulled apart by Jupiter's gravity and then plunged into the planet in a series of glowing collisions. Each impact blossomed into a dark bruise the size of Earth on Jupiter's surface. Yet even these cosmic collisions, viewed from a distance, looked like gentle stains of ink spreading silently across clouds, immense power softened by distance. The bands and spots on Jupiter interact with each other as fluid layers sliding past one another, creating complex wave patterns that ripple through the atmosphere. These waves resemble the patterns on the surface of a slowly stirred drink, shifting and bending over days and weeks. Their movement is not random. It follows deep rhythms of temperature and density, like the heartbeat of a living world. Observing these patterns feels like listening to a story told in motions rather than words. Jupiter's density decreases as you move outward from the core, so that the outer layers are incredibly diffuse. If you could scoop up a handful of Jupiter's outer atmosphere, it would evaporate instantly. It exists not as something that can be held or touched, but as something that can only be floated within. Jupiter's upper atmosphere is like a whisper of gas, the thinnest veil of matter that still holds the warmth of the planet's inner heat. Many spacecraft have visited Jupiter in gentle flybys, capturing images and data. But none has entered through its cloud layers. No human creation has been inside Jupiter. The planet remains largely unexperienced, a place known mostly through distant observation. There is a tranquility in that remoteness. Jupiter protects its mysteries with silence, revealing only what we can witness from afar, as though some knowledge is meant to be dreamed rather than grasped. At certain times, Jupiter's atmosphere generates immense thunderstorms, clusters of lightning flickering across its cloud belts like slow, glowing veins of electricity. From close up, the lightning would be blinding. But from a distance, it manifests as subtle pulses of light, glowing gently within the swirling marble of clouds. These storms illuminate the darkness of Jupiter's night side with scattered glimmers of quiet fire, cosmic lanterns flickering inside the planet's deep shroud. Jupiter's gravitational pull influences not just objects, but the flow of time itself. Time runs slightly slower in Jupiter's strong gravity compared to Earth, an effect predicted by Einstein's theories of relativity. This means that a clock on Jupiter would tick just a little differently, almost imperceptibly stretching seconds into something slightly longer. Jupiter subtly alters the tempo of existence, changing the rhythm of time with its immense presence. Some clouds on Jupiter have lifetimes that span decades, persisting as stable structures in the atmosphere. They form, evolve slowly, and maintain identity even as winds move around them. These clouds become like personalities of the planet's individual gestures of color and shape that endure through seasons and years. They are slow signatures of Jupiter's mood, written in vapor and motion. Jupiter's equatorial zone spins faster than its polar regions, meaning the planet rotates at different speeds depending on latitude. This differential rotation creates tension and layering in the cloud belts, as though the planet were made of multiple shells of atmosphere, sliding past one another with graceful friction. The result is a visual and physical poetry, layers of sky moving in harmony and disagreement, blending contradiction into symmetry. And perhaps the deepest truth about Jupiter is that it holds within it the innocence of beginnings. It is a planet formed from ancient gases remnants of the solar system's creation. In Jupiter, you are looking at material that has remained nearly unchanged for billions of years. When you contemplate it, you are staring into the preserved breath of the early solar system. Jupiter is a time capsule of clouds, holding the oldest whispers of sunlight and floating with them through endless night. Within Jupiter's interior lies a boundary where hydrogen transitions from gas to fluid, and fluid to metallic liquid. And this gradual transformation is not a sudden shift, but a deep, slow metamorphosis happening over thousands of kilometers of depth. Imagine descending through layers of material that become heavier, warmer, and smoother, until eventually the very concept of gas ceases to apply. It would feel like moving from sky into ocean, and from ocean into molten metal, a continuous journey inward, where every meter changes the meaning of matter. The 4 largest moons of Jupiter create subtle gravitational tugs that influence the planet itself, raising tides in its atmosphere. These tides do not resemble water waves. Instead, they form gentle bulges of gas that shift across the cloud belts like soft lifting motions, as if Jupiter were breathing under the influence of its children. This interaction, a planet responding to its moons, is a dance of mutual affection written in gravity, turning the entire Jovian system into a web of interconnected motion. In the soft glow of twilight on Jupiter's high clouds, the light from the distant sun diffuses into hues that are deeper and warmer than Earth's sunsets, spreading into layers of cinnamon gold and pale rose. If one could float there, twilight would feel endless, like a slow dream of color unfolding across a sky with no horizon. Because there is no solid ground, the idea of evening becomes a pure sky dusk, not above you, but all around you. At the edges of the Great Red Spot, where the enormous storm meets calmer regions of cloud, spiral eddies form small, coiling vortices that spin like gentle whirlpools in a vast atmospheric sea. These smaller storms drift along the periphery, forming patterns like strokes of cream in coffee. From afar, they appear almost ornamental decorative curls that mark the boundaries of a titanic storm, giving the impression that even Jupiter's tempests know how to soften into elegance. Jupiter's atmosphere is layered like an enormous watercolor, with cloud decks stacked atop each other at different altitudes. Ammonia clouds high above, ammonium hydrosulfide clouds lower down, and water clouds deeper still. Each layer interacts with sunlight differently, creating subtle gradients and ghost-like shadows. This stratification feels like gazing through translucent veils, stacked one upon another, each tinted with its own secret shade. It is a depth, not of terrain, but of opacity, a vertical tapestry of sky. If one could stand in a gondola-like craft above Jupiter's equator, the view outward would include dozens of moons, suspended like softly glowing beads along subtle curves in the night. These moons would not twinkle. They would shine with steady, pale light, tiny worlds moving in slow procession, each bound by Jupiter's gravity. It would feel like watching a celestial mobile gently rotating around an unseen nursery lamp, a slow, eternal lullaby of motion. Within certain latitudes on Jupiter, long-lived white ovals persist storms smaller than the Great Red Spot, but similar in nature. These storms drift in their lanes for years, sometimes merging or splitting like cells, dividing. They remind one of thoughts that linger in the mind, not turbulent, but consistent patterns that circle quietly over long stretches of time. These white ovals are Jupiter's gentle thoughts, preserved in cloud. The radio signals emitted by Jupiter's magnetosphere create faint, musical hums that can be detected by instruments. These emissions are not audible to human ears directly, but when translated into sound, they resemble haunting, fluctuating tones, like deep ocean calls or distant cosmic wails. It is as though Jupiter sings a quiet song to space, sending melodies through vacuum that only instruments can interpret. The giant planet has a voice not in sound waves, but in electromagnetic murmurs. Sunlight takes nearly an hour to reach Jupiter, and when it does, its warmth is diluted and softened. The sunlight there is pale and cool, like winter midday light on Earth, even though Jupiter is bathed in it continually. This gentleness of solar energy gives the entire environment a hushed quality illumination, without heat, brightness without glare. It is like living beneath a sky lit by a lantern instead of a furnace. And perhaps the most tranquil truth about Jupiter is that its presence in the sky has comforted humans long before telescopes existed. Ancient cultures looked upon its steady glow and saw a calm star moving with dignity through the heavens. They named it not after warriors or destroyers, but after guardians and kings, symbols of generosity, protection, and quiet majesty. Looking at Jupiter even now, one senses that calm, lingering presence, a planet that does not dazzle or burn, but simply endures, steady and immense. There's something profoundly calming in the way Jupiter holds its moons in orbital harmony through resonance, a gravitational rhythm in which the moons influence each other's paths with mathematical precision. Io orbits twice for every one orbit of Europa. Europa orbits twice for every one orbit of Ganymede. This creates a quiet, cosmic choreography where each moon tugs gently on the next, keeping their orbits stable over millions of years. It is as if Jupiter's family of moons practices a slow, graceful dance, a repeating pattern of motion that brings order out of celestial vastness. Deep inside the planet, the pressure is so intense that atoms of hydrogen lose their individual identity and flow together as a seamless sea electrons shared in a metallic state. This metallic hydrogen does not sparkle like metal, but behaves like conductive fluid, swirling and churning beneath unimaginable weight. It is a substance that barely exists elsewhere in the universe, created by conditions too extreme for ordinary matter. Jupiter becomes a natural laboratory of exotic physics, a place where hydrogen dreams of being something more solid, more electric, more star-like. As Jupiter rotates, some regions move faster than others, and this creates subtle shear forces, invisible frictions between atmospheric layers. These generate waves that ripple upward and downward, like vibrations traveling through liquid light. If you could hover there, you would not feel wind hitting your face, but rather a sensation of being lifted and lowered by gentle shifts of pressure, as though the entire atmosphere were a single slow breath. The Great Red Spot itself is shrinking over time, slowly contracting, gradually becoming smaller with each passing decade. But that shrinkage is not decay. It is evolution. The storm adjusts, reforms, rebalances just as every living system changes. One day, it may settle into a smaller, paler storm, or perhaps merge with another atmospheric structure. The idea that even this ancient, iconic feature changes reminds us that nothing in nature is fixed, not clouds, not planets, not even storms older than entire civilizations. In Jupiter's high altitudes, crystals of frozen ammonia drift downward like delicate snowflakes, sublimating into vapor before ever reaching lower layers. This snowfall of clouds is quiet, continuous, cyclical, a perpetual winter that never touches ground. Each crystal carries sunlight briefly, catching pale illumination as it falls, disappearing silently before it reaches the depths. It is snow without surface, a dance of ice within sky. If lightning flickered within Jupiter's clouds while you floated above them, the illumination would occur in soft pulses that brightened whole regions of cloud simultaneously. There would be no thunder, only an expanding dome of light that fades slowly, leaving the atmosphere glowing faintly in its wake. The absence of sound would make the experience strangely dreamlike, seeing power without hearing it, witnessing energy without disruption. Thunder is a human expectation, Jupiter answers with silence. The moons of Jupiter cast pinpoint shadows across its cloud tops during solar transits. But these shadows, though sharp-edged, appear almost gentle as they drift along. They feel like temporary dimples upon the planet's atmosphere, small moments of darkness sliding across an endless field of light. And because Jupiter is so large, the speed of those shadows seems slow, as though time itself stretches around the world, allowing each dot of night to travel without urgency. Many of Jupiter's smaller moons are likely captured asteroids, objects that once wandered freely through space until Jupiter's gravity drew them into orbit. These moons are rough, irregular, ancient, and dim relics from the early solar system. They circle Jupiter in wide, looping paths, like forgotten stones drawn into the gravity of a giant. They are reminders that Jupiter gathers not only light, but history, collecting fragments of time itself. On Jupiter, dawn and dusk happen differently than on Earth. Because of the sun's slow angle and the thickness of the atmosphere, twilight lasts longer, and the shift from bright to dim occurs more gradually. Colors deepen in slow gradients, and shadows dissolve smoothly into the glowing haze of evening. Night does not fall, it settles. Darkness does not arrive, it grows. The planet transitions gently, as if trying not to disturb whatever might be dreaming beneath its clouds. And finally, Jupiter embodies serenity in scale. It is so large, so enduring, so ancient that its presence invokes quiet humility. When we contemplate Jupiter, we are reminded that the universe is vast and unconcerned with hurry. Our anxieties, compressed into a single human lifetime, seem lighter when compared to the ages Jupiter has existed. It holds its storms for centuries, its moons for eons, and its grace for billions of years. In Jupiter's presence, time slows, the mind softens, and even the deepest worries begin to loosen their grip. Jupiter's immense presence has shaped not only the history of the solar system, but its emotional landscape within human consciousness. Across cultures and eras, Jupiter has been associated with wisdom, benevolence, and expansion, not because of myth alone, but because humans instinctively sensed something reassuring in its appearance. When ancient people looked up and saw Jupiter's steady glow, they felt comforted by its constancy. It seemed like a lantern hung in the darkness, a celestial elder watching patiently over the night. Even today, when we gaze at Jupiter through modern telescopes, we feel that same quiet reassurance, an enduring sense that the universe holds guardianship as well as wonder. The atmosphere of Jupiter is so deep and dense that droplets of water can form inside it, not as delicate raindrops, but as heavy, spherical beads that grow and sink through layers of gas. Some of these drops may merge and expand, forming warm globules that descend into lower layers before evaporating again. This creates a continuous cycle of condensation and dispersal and atmospheric heartbeat, where moisture softly drifts downward and dissolves upward in a slow, rhythmic flow that has persisted for billions of years. Certain waves in Jupiter's atmosphere travel horizontally for thousands of kilometers, forming faint patterns like ripples on a pond after a pebble has been dropped. These waves appear as slight undulations in aerosol haze, moving so gradually that they are invisible in real time, but become noticeable when time-lapsed. The sensation is like watching wind passing through wheat fields, except the field is sky, and the wind is eternal. These waves are Jupiter's sighs, soft shifts of momentum that ripple through its enormous body. As the planet rotates, the equatorial belt shows a subtle glow where sunlight reflects off high-altitude ammonia crystals. This gives Jupiter a faint equatorial shimmer, a glowing belt that circles the planet like an elegant highlight. The effect is so serene that, in certain images, Jupiter looks almost jewel-like, as though someone traced a line of pale gold around its waist. This glow is not constant, but fluctuates, another reminder that even the calmest aspects of a giant planet are always in motion. Jupiter's gravitational influence extends far beyond its visible boundary. It shapes the paths of comets in vast arcs that stretch into the outer solar system, curving trajectories like threads pulled across cosmic fabric. Many comets that enter the inner solar system do so only after being gently redirected by Jupiter's pull. It is almost as though Jupiter hands them off, guiding them inward, giving them a direction rather than letting them drift aimlessly. This gravitational guidance is silent, invisible, yet profoundly consequential. If one could float at the altitude where Jupiter's winds are calmest in a drifting exploration pod, the view would include not only the banded clouds below, but the constant motion of faint vapors above thin streaks of haze sliding slowly across the upper layers. The experience would feel like being between two skies, one thick, colorful, and swirling beneath you, and another thin, quiet, and wispy above you. Such an environment would feel weightless, a middle layer where gravity is balanced by buoyancy, and the mind feels suspended in gentle equilibrium. Some storms on Jupiter appear as pale, elongated ovals, not violent in appearance, but soft and almost transparent. These storms form where wind currents diverge, creating peaceful, low-pressure zones that drift along the cloud belts with the calm dignity of slow-moving ships. They resemble quiet thoughts, subtle disturbances that pass through the mind gently, stirring without disturbing. These pale storms remind us that not all forces are abrupt. Some are subtle, gentle, persistent, shaping the world through softness rather than aggression. The deeper you go into Jupiter's interior, the more light disappears, replaced by pure pressure and heat. Eventually, vision would become meaningless, not because of darkness alone, but because substance itself becomes uniform. Darkness and matter merge. The experience would be like floating in warm, liquid night, where sound cannot travel, light cannot penetrate, and motion feels like thought rather than movement. In that vast, silent interior, one senses something ancient, not chaos, but primal continuity. At Jupiter's poles, auroral ovals remain active almost constantly, unlike Earth, where auroras wax and wane with solar storms. These Jovian auroras are steady, persistent, quiet electrical halos that flicker across the poles like luminous crowns. They are formed not only by the solar wind, but by volcanic gases escaping from Io, meaning Jupiter's auroras are partly self-sustained, a planet illuminated by the breath of its moon. It is a relationship, almost poetic, a child providing light to its parent in the dark. And perhaps the calmest truth of all is that Jupiter does not need to shout to be magnificent. It does not burn like the sun or dazzle like Venus. It does not glitter with rings like Saturn or captivate with blue oceans like Earth. Instead, Jupiter expresses majesty through presence. Its vastness is quiet. Its power is serene. Its beauty is patient. It simply exists, immense, benevolent, and enduring, a silent anchor in the solar system, reminding us that greatness can be calm. Some regions within Jupiter's atmosphere contain immense layers of haze that filter light so thoroughly that even bright sunlight becomes muted into a diffuse glow. If you were suspended there, the sunlight would not cast shadows instead, it would blanket everything evenly, like light underwater. You would feel surrounded by illumination rather than illuminated from one direction. This creates a sense of floating within a luminous mist, a kind of atmospheric softness where time blends and light becomes ambiance rather than direction. Jupiter's rapid rotation influences everything within its atmosphere, causing storms and jet streams to stretch horizontally rather than vertically. Instead of towering upward like clouds on Earth, Jovian storms spread outward, forming extended, flowing shapes that can span entire hemispheres. These storms move not like columns, but like rivers, horizontal, sweeping, beautifully stretched. The effect is like watching weather painted across a curved canvas, flattening itself into streaks of motion that wrap around the planet. One of the fascinating aspects of Jupiter's cloud belts is how they interact with each other, sometimes merging into one another, sometimes dividing, sometimes fading entirely, only to re-emerge later. It is as though the planet's atmospheric patterns have memory of fluid intelligence that remembers shapes and restores them. The belts shift like moods, sometimes bold, sometimes faint, sometimes concealed beneath hazy overlays. Jupiter's appearance evolves slowly, gracefully, the way seasons transform landscape on Earth. At its deepest levels, where gas transitions to fluid, the concept of up and down ceases to matter. Movement becomes relative, defined only by gradient and flow. In that realm, motion would feel like drifting through a warm ocean without buoyancy, every direction equally effortless. The sensation would be less like falling and more like dissolving. It is a layer where gravity no longer anchors you, because everything around you is equally dense matter, supporting matter in a silent embrace. The atmosphere of Jupiter acts as a colossal canvas for chemical reactions that produce subtle changes in color over time. Sunlight, cosmic radiation, and interaction with compounds gradually tint the clouds into warmer or cooler tones. The cloud tops shift through shades of pale gold, soft sienna, dusty cream, and mellow amber. These changes are too slow for the eye to track, unfolding over weeks, months, and years. It is like watching geological time expressed in sky. When Europa, Ganymede, or Callisto passes between Jupiter and the Sun, their shadows glide across Jupiter in slow traversals that resemble miniature eclipses. But unlike an eclipse on Earth, where darkness sudden and sharp, these shadows are softer because they fall on clouds. The darkness diffuses, smearing gently across the atmosphere rather than cutting cleanly. The result looks almost like ink spreading through parchment, a gentle, expanding blur of night. The outermost edge of Jupiter's magnetosphere touches regions of space where solar wind particles drift at cosmic speeds. When these particles hit the magnetosphere, they are deflected around Jupiter in streams of plasma that flow like invisible solar rivers. If humans could see this with the naked eye, it would appear as beautiful arcs of faint light bending around Jupiter, like a cosmic bow wave, the planet creating a ripple in the invisible sea of solar wind. Some of Jupiter's storms are colder than the surrounding atmosphere, creating islands of coolness within the warm planet. These cold vortices sink slowly, turning inward, drawing surrounding gases toward their center. Rather than rising upward like warm storms, these cooler systems fold downward, forming layers like descending spirals, The motion would resemble water, swirling into a drain, gentle, continuous, hypnotic. Because Jupiter has no solid surface, objects falling into it never land. They continue descending until they dissolve into the atmosphere, becoming part of Jupiter itself. A spacecraft entering Jupiter would eventually lose shape, its structure compressed, merged, absorbed not with violence, but with gradual surrender. There would be no impact, no collision, only assimilation, a quiet joining of material with the planet's internal sea of fluid gas. Jupiter does not break things, it absorbs them. And finally, Jupiter teaches us a unique form of wonder, the wonder of being humbled. When looking at Jupiter, one is reminded that the universe contains bodies so vast, so ancient, so powerful, that human scales of measurement feel almost irrelevant. Jupiter invites us to step out of ourselves, to loosen our grip on our own importance, and to experience awe not as fear or shock, but as peaceful perspective. In Jupiter's presence, the mind willingly expands and then rests. There's a quiet elegance in the way Jupiter's rotation creates a subtle bulge at its equator, shaping it into an oblate sphere rather than a perfect sphere. This gentle flattening is the result of centrifugal force stretching the planet outward as it spins. If you could view Jupiter from different angles, you would see this slight equatorial widening of physical manifestation of its speed. The planet is so vast that even small distortions become enormous in scale. Yet Jupiter carries this shape with composure, almost as if it wears its rotation as a soft garment wrapped around its waist. At the terminator, the boundary between day and night, Jupiter experiences extended twilight, where sunlight grazes the atmosphere at a low angle. In this region, clouds glow with soft, indirect illumination, and shadows lengthen into smooth gradients. This gentle division creates an impression of depth, like folds in silk curtains. If one hovered there, they would witness a world bathed in muted amber on one side and wrapped in velvety darkness on the other, with the border between them blending like watercolor bleeding through paper. The harmonics of Jupiter's magnetic field generate signals that fluctuate like distant song oscillations that resonate through the magnetosphere. When converted into sound, these signals reveal rhythmic pulses and rising tones that feel strangely organic, almost as if Jupiter is humming to itself. Listening to these recordings evokes a sense of deep calm, as though hearing the slow breathing of a sleeping giant, a reminder that even the seemingly silent universe has its hidden symphonies. Some clouds on Jupiter form in braided patterns, where neighboring jet streams intertwine, creating intricate structures that look like woven bands of fibers. These interlaced forms do not appear chaotic, but purposeful, like careful weaving done by invisible hands. They drift slowly, maintaining their braid-like appearance for weeks at a time, demonstrating that even turbulence can express itself in gentle, artistic motifs. Jupiter's winds do not merely blow, they sculpt. When sunlight interacts with particles in Jupiter's upper clouds, it reflects differently depending on angle and composition. Thus, as Jupiter rotates, slight changes in color and brightness ripple across its surface. From afar, these variations are too subtle to cause dramatic shifts. But up close, one might see the clouds momentarily take on a deeper rust or paler ivory, Jupiter does not flash or flicker. It glows in slow modulation, like the sky thinking. The planet's vast gravity well curves, passing objects into elegant arcs, turning straight-line trajectories into soft spirals. If a comet passes near Jupiter, its path bends gracefully, like a dancer guided into a turn. This gentle steering sometimes captures objects, drawing them temporarily into orbit before releasing them again. Jupiter does not force it, persuades, teaching motion to curve rather than collide. In lower atmospheric layers, heat and pressure cause sound to travel differently, potentially moving through Jupiter's depths as low-frequency waves. These deep pulses could echo within the planet for hours or even days, creating resonances that shape the internal dynamics. Imagine speaking into a vast acoustic chamber where your voice travels not outward, but inward, bouncing through layers of unseen matter. Jupiter may be full of such unseen echoes, shaping its interior like soft reminders of motion. Some regions of Jupiter experience calm zones, vast stretches where winds diminish and clouds appear almost still. These are not voids or deserts, but peaceful pockets of stability in the atmospheric ocean. To drift into one would be like entering a tranquil bay after sailing through waves, a place where everything feels suspended, unhurried, quiet. Jupiter knows how to rest within its own motion. The moons of Jupiter create tiny gravitational tugs on the planet itself, causing minuscule oscillations in its orbit, delicate movements, impossible to see but measurable across time. It is a reminder that even the mightiest object is influenced by the smallest companions. Jupiter, with all its grandeur, still feels the touch of each moon, a cosmic lesson in sensitivity. And finally, Jupiter offers something profound: perspective. When we imagine this world of storms and ribbons of gas, of hidden metallic seas and glowing auroras, we recognize how small our daily concerns are in the face of such grandeur. Yet rather than making us feel insignificant, Jupiter invites us into quiet awe, the kind that expands the mind and loosens the heart. Contemplating Jupiter is like sitting with something ancient and patient, something that reminds us that existence is vast, time is generous, and we have permission to rest. In the depths of Jupiter's interior, heat moves not through convection like boiling water, but through subtle, rolling currents that spiral gently upward. These flows transport warmth with slow grace, blurring boundaries between layers. It is as though the planet's inner energy is not slammed upward, but lifted inch by inch, like warm breath rising through still air. This patient motion gives Jupiter a calming internal rhythm, a pulse of deep, ancient warmth. High above the planet, thin layers of haze absorb ultraviolet light and re-emit it as faint gleam, visible only to sensitive instruments. This glow outlines Jupiter like a halo, turning it into a softly lit lantern adrift in darkness. The planet shines not only by reflection of sunlight, it has its own subtle luminosity, its own signature of light that whispers rather than shines. The Galilean moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, exert gravitational pulls on each other as they orbit. These pulls sustain their orbital resonance, preventing chaos and ensuring elegant repetition. The result is an extraordinarily stable configuration, like a pendulum that always returns to its rhythm. This persistent balance feels deeply peaceful, as though the moons have found an eternal understanding with one another. Jupiter's cloud belts often form long linear streaks, like delicate brushstrokes painted by invisible hands. The beauty lies in their continuity. They stretch across half the planet without breaking. These vast, continuous lines feel like calligraphy written in sky, forming phrases that endure for months or even years. Jupiter becomes a text written in curves and colors. Far from Jupiter, its gravity still influences wandering comets, nudging some into new orbits that may one day encounter other worlds. Jupiter, in this way, is a quiet sculptor of cosmic futures, redirecting ice and rock with a touch invisible to human eyes. It does this with the same ease that wind moves seeds, not knowing where they will land, but allowing possibility to unfold. As we observe Jupiter, we often imagine it as a fixed object, but Jupiter is always changing, even if slowly. Its clouds evolve, its storms shift shape, its colors gradually alter. In this slow evolution, Jupiter mirrors the deeper truth of existence, that permanence is not stillness, but continuity of change. Even colossal worlds flow with time. If one could drift above Jupiter's clouds during its long night, they would witness something astonishing. Moonlight reflected on clouds. The icy moons, lit faintly by distant sunlight, would cast a cool glow upon the atmosphere below. This reflected moonlight would paint Jupiter's clouds in deep silver, turning the day's warm amber tones into calm lunar shades. Jupiter at night would look like a sleeping giant, wrapped in moonlit blankets. The faint rings of Jupiter, though nearly invisible, signify something gentle about the planet, that not all beauty is meant to be obvious. Unlike Saturn's bold, dramatic rings, Jupiter's are shy, hidden, understated. They reward patience, for only those who look closely see them. Their subtlety reflects a quiet truth. Some wonders are meant to be discovered slowly, lovingly. Jupiter's existence reminds us that not everything has to serve a function to be meaningful. It does not nourish life, as far as we know, nor house continents, nor sprout forests. Its role is to exist. And in its existence, it offers a source of wonder so vast that the human mind is stretched gently beyond its walls into cosmic relaxation. Jupiter teaches us emotional spaciousness. And as this journey comes to a close, Jupiter leaves us with a feeling not of sharp awe, but of soft expansion. Its swirling clouds, its hidden depths, its faithful moons, all of it whispers the same message. The universe is large enough to hold our fears, our sorrows, our hopes, our exhaustion, and still remain tranquil. In Jupiter's calming immensity, we are invited to release ourselves into rest and sleep within the reassurance of something immeasurably larger, immeasurably older, and immeasurably peaceful. And now, as we drift away from Jupiter and its grand, swirling silence, allow the immensity of this giant world to settle gently in your thoughts. The pictures of its clouds, its moons, its endless belts of wind and light, let them remain like soft impressions rather than sharp memories, dissolving into the quiet of your resting mind. Jupiter will continue its slow rotation. Its storms will continue their ancient spinning. Its moons will continue gliding in their gentle orbits, and none of it needs your attention. The universe can keep spinning while you rest. Whatever weight you carried today, whatever urgency or worry, or unfinished task, you can set it down now. Let it drift somewhere behind you, becoming smaller, lighter, and eventually silent. In the vastness of the cosmos, your mind has permission to stop holding everything at once. You can simply exist in this moment, breathing in calm and breathing out release. As you fall into sleep, imagine yourself floating away from Jupiter's golden clouds and back through the quiet corridor of stars, feeling lighter, softer, slower. Each breath carries you farther from waking thought and deeper into peaceful dreaming. The giant planet fades into the distance, and the night embraces you gently, like a warm, endless blanket of stillness. Thank you for joining the Sleepy Scientist tonight. If this journey through Jupiter brought you even a little peace, consider subscribing for more nightly wanderings through the calmest corners of science and space, where knowledge becomes comfort and curiosity becomes rest. May your dreams be gentle, your sleep be deep, and your night be filled with the softness of distant clouds and quiet stars. Good night.